Okay, thank you for introducing. My PC was updating Windows and gives me more stress than giving this talk. Okay, performance testing in an agile context. When I, as a test consultant, need to think about performance testing, come with an approach for performance testing, then I have often the feeling like we look to an iceberg. It's huge, it's big, and it's definitely something we want to avoid. And the fact that thinking about performance testing is not always the funniest thing to do, you see it often coming back in your test plans and test strategies. Just think at your last test plan and think at the section where you are telling something about non-functional testing and specifically about performance testing. And I bet one of those famous keywords will be there. And who knows what they are standing for? TBD. To be done, to be defined. Yes, good. Second one. Under construction. And SOD. See other document. So that are the things as test managers, okay, we skip that nasty question about performance testing to a later moment in time, but yeah, performance matters. I think that's nothing new. I think for already decades on testing conferences and in magazine on websites, this statement is there. And if you don't care about performance testing as a company, it hurts you on one of those aspects. That's crystal clear. And I was trying to find, in the many examples on the web, I tried to find a good one. And yeah, luckily or unluckily, in Belgium we had very recently a very good one. Maybe you have heard that Thomas Cook, which is one of the oldest travel companies in the world, went bankrupt. And in 1 week time, all the Thomas Cook shops were closed in Belgium. And of course, people who planned to go on vacation with Thomas Cook, travel was cancelled. So first disappointment. I don't can go on vacation. No worry, in Belgium we have a guarantee fund, and there you can enter a claim to get your money back. Of course, people start calling the help desk. Nobody was taking up because they were overloaded. The guarantee fund, they had 3 people to handle all the calls. Second, disappointment. And third one, in the news, no worry, people, have patience, but in the meantime, go to our website and enter all the details about your claim. And guess what? Website went down. So 3 times frustrations, disappointments, just to bad performance. And I don't know, in your projects, if you try to convince your project leaders, management about investing in performance testing, it's a hard job. And this little tool maybe can help you. It's a small tool of Google, and it allows you to enter a few parameters, and by playing with this one, so with the last parameter with a minimum of speed, then it gives at least a first rough estimation of impact on revenue if your website is a little bit slower. So it can be handy too to say to your management, okay, you don't care, let's make a small exercise with you. But even assume that you have done your homework properly. You have done whatever you could do for performance testing. We live in an interconnected world. We are using web services for around the globe, microservices, third-party systems. So even If my part is working very well in terms of performance, if one of the parts around me is falling down, I'm impacted too. And to illustrate, that's not a common problem in IT. I thought it was 2016, on the German electricity network, there was an overload. And in 10 minutes time, the complete southern Southern Europe network part was completely down. So that's a common problem. Interesting study of Gartner last year, they just make it very clear. If you as a company, if you don't care about performance, you will be out of the competition. And look at the word performance engineering. We are not just talking anymore about just doing performance tests. And I will explain in my talk that you need to see it in a broader scope. You need to think about performance engineering. And it involves a lot more activities than just doing a couple of performance tests. And maybe that's a good statement, even to use to your management, to your project leaders. And when I was thinking about it, I have to be honest, I just reason in the same way. If we have an app, if we have a website, and it's too slow, what are we doing? Okay, we go to the Apple Store, we look up for another app, which do the same, and then we install it. So, did you ever imagine or think, yeah, but that company, maybe they have put a lot of money in their quality, maybe they are good testers, so I will keep this app, and okay, I will live with the fact that performance is very bad. No, we even don't make this kind of reasoning. We look, too slow, okay. So whatever you have done in the background, it doesn't matter for the end user. And what is the state of continuous performance testing? Because continuous performance testing, that's the ideal scenario. That's where we need to evolve to. And I try to give whatever project methodology you are working in, performance testing is always the ugly kid of the class. Even in waterfall, our test plans are full with, yeah, we need to do system testing, acceptance testing, performance testing, we'll see. Maybe at the end, when we have everything in place. The second one is so the famous are the companies who are telling you, we are doing agile. Very good. Until the moment when you look more in detail and you see, okay, what are you doing agile? You're doing development in an agile way. But once development is done, then you throw it over the wall, and then we go further in more classical way of testing, with performance testing at the end. And even on the third row, the full agile projects, performance testing, we embrace development, we embrace analysis, even we embrace testing roles into agile, but performance testing, no. And an interesting study, it was done by Neotis. So Neotis is a tool vendor, and they have a tool, Neoload. They did a very interesting survey this year. And they were asking the companies, okay, are you doing agile? Are you doing continuous testing? And if you do continuous testing, what's the part of performance testing included? And like you see, the figures are not that good. So we can improve on that. And I was wondering, what is holding us back? What are the things below the iceberg that blocks us from embedding performance testing in our agile projects? For me, and that's not the only three, I see three big reasons. non-functional requirements, planning, and team organization. Okay, let's dive into each of those explanations. Non-functional requirements. I guess that most amongst you, a lot of have the same issue. If you need to do performance testing and you ask your business, what is the performance requirement? Then you get this kind of funny answers. Yeah, faster than previous release. But what is fast? And needs to be fast for every function in your application. Or maybe functionalities, or for example, just running once a month a report, maybe, then you can live with a longer performance than creating accounts and making a purchase. So I hope that you agree that as performance testers, we cannot do anything with this kind of requirements. So we need to enrich it. And if you do it like in this example, then you get a lot more meaningful information about what do we expect from performance. It is telling something about the input. It is telling something about concurrent usage. That's also one of the pitfalls. Business is always asking, yeah, can my application handle 500 users at the same time? Yeah, but what do they need to do? It's telling something about what do we expect at server capacity. And in the response times, you make a separation in terms of complexity of application of your pages. Because, for example, just calling or writing something into a database, that's quite easy. But if a functionality calls an external web service, giving you information back that you manipulate and you send it to another system, that's already something more complex. And in a good non-functional requirement, you say something about the allowed fault tolerance. Because of course, whatever performance testing you will do, you will never have every response time in the same, below the same threshold. And this information can be very useful for your operations, service desk, because based on that you can define your SLA. Okay, now we have a good non-functional requirement. Now the question is, yeah, but in Agile we are working with user stories. How do we fit it together? So what I've done, that's the job side of our company, and I have a very straightforward user story. It's very easy. You just add this kind of information to your user story. And then you say, okay, functionally, I expect this, and from a performance point of view, I want to have this information in it. And when I was showing this slide to my colleague, and my colleague is very into Agile, we had a kind of nerdy discussion. And he told me, you may not call this a user story. I say, whoa, and why not? A user story is telling something about functionality of the system, and not about performance. Then it's no longer a user story. To be honest, I don't care if you call it a user story, a fake user story, whatever name, as long as you put the information in it. And there are other ways to do it. In a user story, you have your acceptance criteria. There, for example, you can add as an acceptance criteria, we need to do a performance test for this user story. Specify the requirements, maybe specify the type of performance test you want to do. Or maybe in some projects, they call it a technical user story. In models like SAFe, so everyone knows SAFe, so SAFe is a model for leverage agile to more company-wide level. There you have constraints. And finally, you have the angle of the handle of your definition of done. There you can define and integrate your performance testing and performance requirements. And coming back, so that's the famous SAFe framework. So it's a kind of framework that guides companies who wants to move to company-wide agile way of working. Even in that model, on several levels, they have foreseen non-functional requirements. And even the SAFe model prescribes you have, just like you have a backlog of your functional requirements, you need to have a backlog for all kind of non-functional requirements. So it's embedded. So if every manager told you, yeah, but in Agile it's not foreseen, they didn't thought about it, you can say no, it is, and there are things for it. So that are the handles how you can integrate non-functional requirements in your user stories. Planning. Let's take this example. I have a release consisting of 4 sprints. The last is called the hardening sprint. That's typical, the sprint where we bring everything together and couple the loose ends together. My question to you is, when do you plan performance testing? Who will do it in the hardening sprint? Nobody. Who plan to do it in sprint 3? Sprint 2? 1? Oh, only 2 hands. So all the rest, they say, yeah, maybe we don't do performance test, or we'll do it later on. It's not like playing darts. So this time sprint 2 in the hardening sprint. Why do you see often that projects do it in the hardening sprint? Of course, because then, and I can understand the reasoning, they say all the systems are together, all the interfaces, everything around GUI is there, so that's the best place to do it. Then my question is, what will you do if you encounter big performance issues? Because normally the next step should be that you ship your product of that release to production. So my advice is start small from the left. And it can be easily done, so already on API level, you can do performance tests. So if you have a simple web service with tools like SOAP UI, you can easily, like you can automate the web service, you can do performance testing on that level. And then sprint after sprint, you start with integrating small components while you keep repeating the API level performance testing for new components in the sprint. And only in the hardening sprint, there you do more your big bucket performance test. That's another pitfall that we often see with customers. They think, yeah, I need to do a relevant performance test is only one with 1,000, 2,000 users. And to give you a small anecdote, in a current project, there was a supplier and they had delivered a calculation component. We told them we will do performance tests, and they say, okay, how many users? Max 50, because at the time the customer had the community edition of a tool which comes with a free bunch of 50 users. And the supplier was just laughing with us. He said, hey, are you crazy? 50. Our system can handle a lot more. We say, okay, but for the moment we have only the 50. And it took us only 25 users, and we detected already a memory leak. And then they stopped laughing. So it's really very useful on the first level, just with a small bunch of users. Do a performance test and you will get quickly a good idea. Of course, if you have a CI/CD pipeline with the build servers, the Jenkins, where Jenkins has of other tools comparable with Jenkins, they have add-ins to do or to integrate your performance test. So use it. And even then, I got a question of a customer who asked me, yeah, but in a CI/CD pipeline, when my results are not okay, how can I stop it? There are ways, and okay, it's more technical, there are ways to put a kind of automated quality gate after each stage in your pipeline to stop the pipeline if performance is not good. And finally, monitor from the right. If we talk about monitoring, we are often thinking about that's something for production, for operations. My advice is include those people already in your performance test. It has a lot of benefits. First of all, they get an insight in what are you doing, what is coming out of their way. Second, they have specific tools where they can help you to analyze results. So from a performance tester perspective, maybe you will detect my response time is increasing. Those guys, they have a lot of tools to say, okay, it's on the DB level or it's in the network part. So use that kind of information. Use like this morning Marcus was telling, use usage analytics. That can help you a lot to prepare your performance tests. So that was some ideas how you can handle the aspect or integrate it in the planning. Now about the team. Let's assume, and that's based on a real project. There was a customer and they had a big program running, and each consisting of 20 projects working in squads and an agile way. We were in squad 2, and we had to do performance tests for that squad. But like you see, the components within our scope, of course, were connected with other components, with security components. So then we went to the Scrum Master. We said we need to have support from people of Squad 1. Yeah, sorry, they are fully booked in this sprint. You have to wait 2 sprints before they can help you. So that's the kind of issues we have to deal with in Agile. And how can you do it? First of all, in Agile, we often speak about the 3 amigos. I want to add a 4th amigo. Like I previously explained, your ops, your operations need to be in already from the start. One of our customers, they work like this when they do performance tests, and they call it the performance campaign day. And at that day, they start at 8 until 5, and they have a big room. And all the teams are around the table, and on the beamer, the performance tester is showing the scripts, is explaining the purpose and the goals. And around the table, everyone is looking in his own systems, and they, instead of just sending a mail, they say, oh guys, we see that the DB cannot handle, okay, we need to lower, or okay, it's good, you can add another bunch of users to the test. Okay, but how to handle, because performance testing skills or expertise is very scarce in testing. So how do we have to deal it? I see 3 kind of models. First is the center of excellence way of working. So where all the testing services are centralized and you just deliver a service to a project. So can be, okay, as a performance testing service, we will do 3 runs for your project. We give you the reports, and that's the service we deliver. In one project, I worked in this construction, and it didn't fit with the agile mindset, because we were coming really from an external point of view, really, and we didn't have that agile mindset. We were not in the agile flow. And for some project, 3 runs were not enough. So that was not the good way. Then the second, and I'm a big believer of this way, is setting up a transversal performance squad, which, and I will show it in the next slide, the idea behind, which work in a fully agile mindset and which delivers a service to the different projects. And of course, that's the ideal scenario, where in each squad you have someone. It doesn't have to be the tester, because in agile, we are not talking about really a profile. It's a task that needs to be done. If you have a developer who can manage to do a performance test, it's okay. But of course, that's the future. So let's look to the transversal way. So in the transversal squad, we have all the default ceremonies. So we have a sprint planning, we have a scrum meeting, and the members of the team consist of fixed members. So we have a scrum master, we have what we call the application performance management engineer, and the green resources that are the flex resources. So based on the planning, for example, let's say that from Monday we start a new sprint, 2 weeks, and in this sprint we will do performance test for the bank application. Then in that sprint, some of the resources from the banking application team will join this squad, maybe not full-time, but they will help us. And maybe in the next sprint, then we will do it for another component, and again, those resources from that component will join us. This kind of planning can be discussed in the Scrum of Scrum meeting. There, the Scrum Master of the APM squad needs to align with the other Scrum Masters about planning for doing performance testing. But this can help you to deal with the scarce resources you have in performance testing, and it's fully embedded in the way of working agile with an own backlog, doing retrospective and so on. Okay, so then that are the things we can do to handle the fact that performance testing is not yet fully embedded in agile. But that's not, if I may dream, that's not for me the end state. If you have already that in place, that's very good. That's very good. But one kind of information we are missing in the concept of performance engineering is information about the infrastructure layer. Let's take this example. So let's take, on Monday you come back and you get a phone from your infra engineers and telling, hey guys, we have 2 servers. 2 servers are down, and well, the cooler is broken. So what do we need to repair the first? Based on this information, I cannot decide. Maybe I will say, yeah, just take the first one. As long as you don't have the combined information between your application landscape and your infrastructure layer, you cannot make the right decision. So you have to know which applications are supported by which servers. And that's the information you need to bring around the table when you talk about performance testing and engineering. So to conclude, performance testing, we are not yet there, but I give you some handles to start, and some are not the big things to implement. And I believe if you use at least some of them, then you can avoid a kind of a Titanic scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience?
Hey, thanks for the presentation. I have a question. How to add the performance test to the continuous deployment process? Because in our case, it usually takes, for example, like 1 hour, and we need to get a feedback faster.
Yeah, good question. And maybe I will jump back to the planning one. Yeah. First of all, you need to define, okay, the kind of performance testing, what is the goal? Because, of course, if you have to do in every sprint a performance test of 1 hour or maybe 2 hours, then the performance test become the blocking issue to go further. My advice is that you do the performance test which take more time, maybe in parallel, not just to block your the speed of your pipeline, but on an API level, then it can easily done. And even at that level and in the API level, if you don't have to run it for 1 hour, even already with a small bunch of users running it for just half an hour, it can be okay. Another customer has built in their pipeline, and they do this kind of testing every day as a kind of sanity check, starting from 5 to 6. Yeah, and that. Yeah, yeah. So because they want to impact development, the business, and it's agreed, okay, after business hours, 1 hour, every day. And they have defined for which applications and for which functions, because they don't do it for all components, because then they will end up in that question, yeah, my performance test is taking 4 hours because I can continue.
Hi, thank you for that presentation, really nice. I have a question about the team layer. In an agile context, we assume that the entire team is responsible for quality, right? It's everybody's responsibility. Now, my question is, when designing performance tests, you need to figure out what are the scenarios, who will write the scripts, who's responsible for the environments, setting them up, then killing them afterwards, all those stuff that combine to this four amigos, that, as you said. Now, shall we just assume that every team member is capable of doing all those things, or you have some tips how to do it differently?
Yeah. No, because that's sometimes I have discussions with customers and colleagues who said a test automator can do performance testing and vice versa. I don't believe in it, because it's another discipline where a test automator can work on his own once he has received the input. Performance tester cannot do that. So there the knowledge is spread amongst people, and that if we go to the and that's the benefit of working in this transversal squad ID. So you need to define upfront which kind of expertise knowledge do I need, and like information about the security component of taking test data from production. There you can define that are for me those flex resources. So you need to define this guy, I need him to help me for to do my performance test.
Sorry, one more question.
Okay, I got one. If you have the infrastructure for the production, then it's going to have some performance itself, yes? So if you are planning the performance of the applications, you can imagine easily the scenario where the requirements have to be tight within the 1 second, for example. And the guys meet the requirement on the scaled level on some, I don't know, 5% on the infrastructure they have. But on production, the infrastructure is not enough. So
Yeah.
who's the responsibility? Who have the responsibility to scale it properly? Like, you know, we can put a lot of dev efforts to lower the levels of the time, or we can speak about the infrastructure that we need to, I don't know, buy faster servers or faster routers or something else. So where would you put the point of negotiations in these sprints?
Yeah. Maybe first I will revert, and that's why, why the operation guys are very crucial to help you with that, because then it's about if I do my performance test in a test environment, how do I can scale the results to our production environment, which is different in sizing. And it's my experience as a performance tester, I cannot make the right decisions about, and the operation guys, they need and can help you with to help you about scaling, dynamic scaling of your environment. And that's something that if when we go in the planning, in the beginning of your sprints, you can do your performance test in an environment which is not production-like. Of course, it's always of the idea to do in this phase a performance test in an environment which is production-like. It will never be the production. Whatever you try, it will be something. And with the information, with the support of operations, they need to help you to say, okay, the results that we are getting out of this test, can we assume that they are relevant once we go in production or not? So it's a combined effort.
Okay, thank you very much.